The morning sky over Seoul changed in an instant. One moment it was clear blue. The next moment, massive shadows blocked out the sun. Captain Minho stood on the rooftop of the United Earth Defense Force headquarters and stared upward. His coffee cup slipped from his hand and shattered on the concrete below. 12 enormous ships hung in the atmosphere like floating cities. They were beautiful in a way that made his chest tight with fear. The metal surfaces gleamed with colors that shifted between silver and gold. Strange symbols glowed along their sides. These were not human ships. Nothing on Earth could build something so large or so graceful. His communication device buzzed frantically. Every military base on the planet was calling at once. Minho pressed the button and heard the panicked voice of General Park. All stations are detecting the same thing. They appeared simultaneously over major cities worldwide. No warning. Our satellites saw nothing until they were already here. Within an hour, the aliens made contact. Their message played on every screen and device across the planet. The being who appeared was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and eyes that seemed too large. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, Mandarin, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other languages simultaneously. People of Earth, I am Ambassador Kelthrin of the Valorian Combine. We come in peace and friendship. We have watched your world for many cycles and believe the time has come for humanity to join the greater galactic community. We offer you safety, prosperity, and knowledge beyond your current understanding. Minho was assigned to the first contact team, along with diplomatic liaison Hana. She was younger than him, barely 30, but she had a sharp mind that missed nothing. They met the Valorians aboard the flagship that hovered over the Pacific Ocean. The interior was overwhelming with its advanced technology and beautiful design. Everything glowed softly with light that had no visible source. Kelthrin greeted them with what seemed like a genuine smile. Welcome, representatives of humanity. You have no idea how long we have waited for this moment. The negotiations began immediately. Kelthrin explained that the galaxy was divided into many territories and powers. The Valorian Combine protected 47 different worlds through something called the Galactic Protection Network. These worlds lived in peace and prosperity under Valorian guidance and security. Your world is special, Kelthrin said, his large eyes gleaming. Your species shows great potential, but you are also vulnerable. There are dangers in the dark spaces between stars that you cannot imagine. We offer you membership in our network. In exchange for allowing our peacekeeping forces to station here and providing certain resources, we will share our technology and ensure no harm comes to Earth. The world leaders back on Earth were already arguing about the offer. Most wanted to accept immediately. The technology alone could solve climate change, end hunger, and cure diseases. The promise of safety was even more appealing. Humanity had always feared what might be waiting in the darkness of space. But Minho felt uneasy. He stood in the corner of the negotiation room and watched Kelthrin carefully. The ambassador spoke smoothly and smiled often, but something felt wrong. When Hana asked specific questions about the threats they would be protected from, Kelthrin's answers became vague. There are hostile forces in the outer regions, he would say. Dark powers that seek to destroy peaceful civilizations. The details would only frighten you. On the third day of negotiations, scientist Tai Yang arrived with the contact team. He was brilliant with technology and had been analyzing the samples the Valorians had given as gifts. Small devices that could translate any language, medical scanners that could diagnose illness instantly, and power cells that never ran out of energy. Tai Yang pulled Minho and Hana aside during a break. His face was pale. I found something in the devices, he whispered. Every single gift contains hidden programs, remote activation codes, surveillance systems. These are not just gifts. They are tracking and control mechanisms. Engineer Gina confirmed it that same evening. She had taken apart one of the power cells in her lab back on Earth. The technology is incredible, she admitted, but it is also designed to send data back to the Valorian ships. Everything we say near these devices, everything we do, they can monitor it all. And worse, there are shutdown codes embedded in the systems. They could disable our entire power grid if we become dependent on their technology. Minho brought this information to Hana. She stared at the evidence for a long moment, then nodded slowly. We need to be very careful about what we agree to. The signing ceremony was scheduled for the following week. Every nation on Earth would formally accept the accords and join the Galactic Protection Network. The event would be broadcast worldwide. Kelthran had insisted on the pageantry, calling it a historic moment for humanity. On the day of the ceremony, representatives from every country gathered aboard the Valorian flagship. Cameras were everywhere. Billions of people watched from Earth. Kelthran stood at the center of a grand hall, the official documents displayed on a glowing table before him. Today, humanity takes its first step into a larger universe, he announced. Today, you become part of something greater than yourselves. You will be safe. You will be protected. You will prosper under our guidance. The first representative stepped forward to sign. Then Hana moved to the microphone. Her voice was clear and steady as it echoed through the hall and across every broadcast channel on Earth. Ambassador Kelthran, before we sign these accords, I have one question. You have promised us safety. You have promised us protection. But you have never given us a clear answer about something very important. She paused and looked directly into his large alien eyes. You offer us safety from whom exactly? What specific threat requires us to give up our independence and allow your military forces on our world? The grand hall fell silent. Kelthran's smile froze on his face. His blue skin seemed to pale even further. Around the room, other Valorian officials shifted uncomfortably. The silence stretched out for 10 seconds, then 20. Finally, Minho stepped forward to stand beside Hana. It is a simple question, Ambassador. Who are you protecting us from? The silence in the grand hall stretched until it became unbearable. Kelthran's smooth diplomatic mask cracked at the edges. His large eyes darted to his fellow Valorians, then back to Hana. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its warmth. The threats are complex, he began. Difficult to explain to a species that has never ventured beyond its own moon. There are many dangers in the galaxy. Military strategist Doyun stood up from his seat among the human delegation. He was older than most of the team, with gray hair and scars from past wars. That is not an answer, Ambassador. We are not children who need to be protected from information. If you want us to sign away our sovereignty, we deserve to know the exact nature of the threat. Kelthran's expression hardened. The friendly ambassador was disappearing, replaced by something colder. Very well. Since you insist on details, I will provide them. There is an empire called the Krell Dominion. They have been expanding aggressively for centuries. They conquer worlds, enslave populations, and strip planets of resources. They are ruthless and powerful. Without our protection, Earth would be defenseless when they arrive. Taeyang pulled out his tablet and began calculating immediately. He accessed the star charts that the Valorians had provided earlier in the negotiations. His fingers moved quickly across the screen. After several minutes, he looked up with a frown. According to your own data, the Krell Dominion is approximately 200 light-years from Earth. Their expansion rate, based on the territories you have marked, is roughly 1 light-year per decade. That means they would not reach this sector for at least 2,000 years. Kelthran's face tightened. You do not understand the complexities of interstellar expansion. They could accelerate their conquest. They could develop faster travel. The threat is real. Medical Officer Yuna had been studying the information about the 47 protected worlds. She stood and addressed Kelthran directly. I noticed that none of these protected species maintain their own military forces. All defense is handled exclusively by Valorian peacekeepers. Why is that necessary if they are safe? Coordination and efficiency, Kelthrin replied quickly. A unified defense force is stronger than fragmented planetary militias. Or it means they are completely dependent on you, Hana said quietly, unable to defend themselves if they ever want to leave your protection. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. The human delegation was no longer pretending to be impressed or grateful. They were asking hard questions, and the Valorians were struggling to provide convincing answers. That night, pilot Junho took one of Earth's newest scout ships on an unauthorized mission. He was one of the best pilots in the Defense Force, capable of flying anything with engines. He approached the Valorian fleet carefully, using stealth technology that humanity had developed in secret. The Valorians thought Earth was primitive, but humans had been preparing for first contact for decades. Junho scanned the Valorian vessels from a safe distance. What he found made his blood run cold. The ships that Kelthrin called peacekeeping vessels were equipped with weapons designed for planetary bombardment. They had orbital assault capabilities and troop transport bays large enough to carry invasion forces. These were not defensive ships. These were occupation tools. He transmitted the data back to Minho immediately. These are not protectors. These are conquerors. While Junho gathered military intelligence, Gina worked through the night in her laboratory. She had been carefully studying the Valorian technology, looking for weaknesses and understanding how their systems worked. She was brilliant with computer systems and had learned more about their networks than the Valorians realized. When she finally broke through their encryption, what she found was devastating. The Valorian database contained detailed records of all 47 protected worlds. But the files did not describe protection. They described subjugation. Each world paid massive tributes in resources, technology, and labor. The Valorians stationed their forces on every planet not to defend them, but to control them. Any world that tried to leave the protection network was threatened with abandonment to the Krell. But the most damning evidence was buried deeper in the files. The Krell Dominion was real, but the Valorians had been exaggerating the threat for centuries. The Krell were far away and focused on their own territory. They had never shown interest in expanding toward Valorian space. The entire protection racket was built on a lie designed to keep worlds afraid and dependent. Gina called an emergency meeting of the entire human delegation. When she presented her findings, the room erupted in anger. They had been played. The Valorians were not benevolent protectors. They were sophisticated criminals running a protection scheme on a galactic scale. The next morning, Minho and Hana confronted Kelthrin in front of all the delegates from Earth and representatives watching via broadcast. Minho laid out everything they had discovered: the hidden surveillance, the invasion-ready fleet, the truth about the Krell, the centuries of exploitation. Kelthrin did not deny it. Instead, his demeanor changed completely. The friendly ambassador vanished entirely. What remained was cold and calculating. "You have been very clever for primitives," he said slowly, "but you have made a terrible mistake. You should have accepted our generous offer while it was still on the table." "It was never generous," Hana replied. "It was slavery disguised as safety." Kelthrin stood and looked down at the human delegation. "The galaxy is not kind to worlds that stand alone. You need protection, whether you realize it or not. The Accords ensure order and stability. Every civilization must make sacrifices for the greater good." "The greater good of the Valorian Combine, you mean," Doyen said. "Yes," Kelthrin admitted without shame. "We have brought peace to 47 worlds. We have prevented chaos and maintained order. That is worth the price we ask." Minho stepped forward. "We reject your accords. Earth will not join your protection network. We will remain independent." Kelthrin's expression became ice cold. "That would be unfortunate. We have invested significant resources in preparing Earth for integration. We cannot simply walk away empty-handed. If you refuse to join willingly, we will be forced to reconsider our approach." "Is that a threat?" Hana asked. "It is a reality," Kelthrin replied. "Without our protection, Earth will be vulnerable to many dangers. Pirates, rogue states, resource raiders, and yes, eventually the Krell. We have protected this sector of space for generations. If we withdraw that protection, who knows what might happen to your primitive world?" The human delegation returned to Earth that evening. Within hours, Valorian ships moved into position around the planet. It was not an invasion, not yet, but it was clearly a blockade. No ships could leave Earth. All communications to other star systems were jammed. The Valorians had not attacked, but they had trapped humanity on their own world. Kelthrin sent one final message that played across every screen on Earth. His face was stern and without mercy. "The people of Earth have made an unwise decision. You have rejected the safety we offered. Now you will learn why that safety was necessary. You have 7 days to reconsider. After that, we will consider this system unclaimed territory and act accordingly." The threat was clear. Submit or face the consequences. Panic spread across Earth like wildfire. The Valorian blockade was complete and threatening. News channels showed the alien ships circling the planet like predators. Protests erupted in major cities. Some people demanded the government sign the accords immediately. Others called for resistance. The world teetered on the edge of chaos. But inside the command center of the United Earth Defense Force, Minho was surprisingly calm. He stood before a tactical display with Hana and Doyen at his side. "It is time," he said quietly. Hana nodded. "Are you sure we are ready?" "We have to be," Minho replied. "We always knew this moment might come." What the Valorians did not know was that Earth had been preparing for hostile first contact for decades. While the world governments talked about peaceful exploration and scientific discovery, the military had been planning for a darker possibility. What if the first aliens humanity met were not friendly? What if they saw Earth as prey rather than equals? Doyun had been part of that secret planning from the beginning. Now he activated protocols that had been waiting in the shadows for years. Deep in underground bunkers, systems came online. Hidden satellites in Earth's orbit woke from dormant states. Defense platforms that looked like space debris revealed their true purpose. "The Valorians think we are primitives who barely made it to our own moon," Doyon explained to the assembled military leaders. "They think we have nothing that could threaten their advanced ships. They are wrong." Taeyang and Gina had been working together since returning from the Valorian flagship. They had spent years studying every piece of alien technology that humanity had secretly recovered. Crashed probes, abandoned satellites, debris from ships that passed through the solar system. Each piece had been carefully analyzed and reverse-engineered. "We are not as advanced as the Valorians," Taeyang admitted, "but we are not helpless either. We have weapons they do not expect. We have defenses they cannot easily detect." Gina brought up displays showing Earth's hidden defense network, railguns capable of firing projectiles at relativistic speeds, electromagnetic pulse weapons that could disable electronics, stealth satellites equipped with nuclear missiles, quantum-encrypted communication systems that the Valorians could not jam or intercept. It was not enough to win a war against the massive Valorian fleet, but it was enough to make invasion costly. "We were playing weak," Minho explained to the world leaders in an emergency virtual conference. "We pretended to be impressed and intimidated. We asked questions and gathered intelligence. Now we have what we need to make our stand. But the most important weapon in Earth's arsenal was not military. It was information. Communications officer Nari had been working quietly since the moment Gina uncovered the truth about the Valorian protection scheme. Nari was a genius with signals and broadcasting. She knew how to cut through jamming. She knew how to reach audiences across vast distances. While the Valorians thought they had blocked all of Earth's communications, Nari had been broadcasting on frequencies they did not monitor. She sent out the truth about the Valorian Combine on every possible channel. The recordings of Kelthrin's threats, the evidence of the protection racket, the data showing how 47 worlds were being exploited. Everything was transmitted outward into the galaxy. The other species under Valorian protection deserve to know the truth, Nari said. And more importantly, the Krell Dominion needs to hear what the Valorians have been saying about them. It took 3 days for the first responses to arrive. They came not from the protected worlds, but from the Krell themselves. The message was brief and direct. It appeared on every screen aboard the Valorian flagship and on Earth simultaneously. This is Fleet Commander Thragos of the Krell Dominion. We have received transmissions from the planet called Earth. The claims made by the Valorian Combine about our empire are false. We have no interest in conquering your world. We have never targeted the species under Valorian control. For centuries, we have been defending our territory against Valorian expansion. They are the aggressors, not us. If Earth wishes to communicate directly, we will respond. The message changed everything. Kelthrin's face appeared on every screen on Earth moments later. His calm mask was gone, replaced by barely controlled fury. You have made a catastrophic mistake. You have no understanding of galactic politics. You have destabilized a peaceful order that has existed for centuries. A peaceful order built on lies and exploitation, Hana replied via broadcast. We would rather stand alone than live under your boot. Kelthrin's expression turned cold. Then you will stand alone. And you will fall alone. He cut the transmission. The Valorian ships began moving into attack formation. Energy readings spiked across their hulls. They were preparing to fire on Earth's surface. The blockade was ending. The invasion was beginning. But Nari had one more surprise ready. She had not just contacted the Krell. She had sent Earth's message to all 47 species under Valorian protection. She had sent it to independent worlds. She had broadcasted across every open channel in known space. The truth about the Valorian Combine was spreading like light across the galaxy. Within hours, 3 of the protected worlds made stunning announcements. They declared independence from the Galactic Protection Network. They rejected the Valorian Accords. They cited Earth's courage as inspiration. The Combine was not just facing resistance from one primitive planet. Their entire system of control was beginning to crack. Kelthrin was now in an impossible position. If he destroyed Earth, he would prove that the protection network was a sham. Other worlds would rebel, but if he backed down, he would appear weak. The Combine would lose its grip on its subjects. He chose violence. All ships, prepare to engage Earth's defenses. We will make an example of this planet. Let the galaxy see what happens to those who refuse our protection. Minho gave the order. Activate all defense systems. Launch the fighters. Prepare for battle. Junho climbed into his fighter along with hundreds of other pilots. They knew they were outmatched. The Valorian ships were larger, faster, and more heavily armed, but humans had one advantage that the Valorians had not counted on. Humans were stubborn. Humans did not give up, and humans really hated bullies. The first Valorian attack waves came in fast. Energy weapons lit up the night sky, but Earth's hidden defenses responded. Railgun rounds tore through shields that were not designed to stop solid projectiles at near-light speed. Stealth satellites fired missiles from positions the Valorians had not detected. Electromagnetic pulses disabled weapons systems on the smaller attack craft. It was not enough. The Valorians had dozens of ships and thousands of weapons. Earth's defenses were holding, but they could not hold forever. Cities were being evacuated. Medical teams like the one led by Yuna prepared for massive casualties. The battle was just beginning, and Earth was already losing. Then something appeared at the edge of the solar system. A massive spatial distortion opened near Jupiter. Ships began emerging from what looked like a tear in space itself. They were huge, angular, and covered in weapons. Their design was brutal and efficient, built for war rather than elegance. The Krell had arrived. Minho stared at the tactical display in disbelief. They came. The Krell actually came. Hana was equally shocked. But why? We are nothing to them. Why would they help us? The answer came from Thragos himself. The Krell commander's face appeared on the main screen. He looked fierce, with dark metallic skin and eyes that glowed faintly red. But when he spoke, there was something like respect in his voice. Earth vessel, this is Fleet Commander Thragos. We received your broadcasts. We have been fighting Valorian expansion for generations. We know their methods. We know their lies. We are impressed that one young species had the courage to expose them. We offer assistance. Doyun leaned forward. What do you want in return? Thragos showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. Only this. Keep telling the truth. Keep fighting for your freedom. The galaxy needs more worlds like yours. The Krell fleet moved with brutal efficiency. 20 massive warships positioned themselves between Earth and the Valorian forces. Their weapons powered up with a deep hum that could be felt even through the vacuum of space. Commander Thragos had made his intentions clear. He was here to help Earth, and the Valorians would have to go through him to reach the planet. Kelthrin's flagship tried to retreat, but the Krell ships surrounded it. Thragos opened a channel that broadcast to everyone. Ambassador Kelthrin, you have painted my people as monsters for centuries. You have used fear of the Krell to enslave dozens of worlds. Today the galaxy will see the truth. The Krell Dominion does not attack peaceful civilizations. We defend ourselves against empires like yours. Kelthrin's face twisted with rage. You are interfering in matters that do not concern you. Earth lies in Valorian protected space. Protected space? Thragos laughed, and it was a harsh sound. You mean conquered space. We know what you do to the worlds under your control. We have known for a long time, but today is different. Today you picked a fight with a species too stubborn to be scared, and they asked the one question you could not answer. Minho watched the confrontation from Earth's command center. His heart was racing. The Krell were here, but could they be trusted? Were they really defenders, or were they just another empire with their own agenda? He glanced at Hana. She was thinking the same thing. Doyen spoke quietly. We need to be careful. The enemy of our enemy is not automatically our friend. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared across the command center. 3 more worlds had just declared independence from the Valorian Combine. They were scattered across the galaxy, but the message was clear. Earth's resistance had inspired rebellion. The protection network was collapsing. Kelthrin saw his empire crumbling in real time. He made a desperate decision. If he could not control Earth through fear, he would control it through force. If he could destroy humanity quickly and decisively, it might scare the other rebelling worlds back into submission. He ordered his fleet to attack Earth immediately, regardless of the Krell presence. All ships, target the human planet, maximum firepower. We end this now. The Valorian vessels broke formation and charged toward Earth. The Krell fleet moved to intercept, but some Valorian ships slipped through. Energy weapons blazed across space. The battle became chaos. Junho launched his fighter into the firestorm. Around him, hundreds of human pilots did the same. They were flying craft that were primitive compared to the alien technology, but they flew with skill born from desperation. Junho's squadron targeted a Valorian cruiser that was lining up a shot at the Pacific Defense platform. "Break left! Break left!" he shouted into his radio. "Target their weapon arrays. Don't let them fire on the surface." His missiles struck the cruiser's shields, barely scratching them. But then a massive Krell battleship appeared alongside them. Its weapons tore through the Valorian shields like paper. The cruiser exploded in a ball of fire that lit up space. On the ground, Yuna and her medical teams worked frantically. The Valorians had managed to hit several cities with long-range weapons before the defenses stopped them. Buildings burned, people screamed, ambulances raced through streets filled with debris. Yuna moved through the chaos with practiced calm, treating injuries and organizing evacuations. "We need more supplies," she called to her assistant, "and get me a report on how many casualties we are expecting." In orbit, Gina's defense platforms were performing better than expected. The railguns fired continuously, their solid projectiles punching through Valorian armor. The electromagnetic pulse weapons disrupted enemy targeting systems, but it was not enough. For every Valorian ship that fell, 2 more seemed to take its place. Nari continued her broadcasts throughout the battle. She showed the galaxy everything: the Valorian aggression, the Krell intervention, the human resistance. Her voice narrated the violence with steady professionalism, even as explosions rocked the building around her. "The Valorians claim to be protectors," she said into the camera, "but today they show their true nature. They are attacking a world that only wanted freedom. Let everyone watching remember this moment. Let every species under Valorian control see what their protectors really are." The turning point came unexpectedly. A group of Valorian ships suddenly stopped firing. Their weapons powered down. Their engines went dark. Then a transmission came from one of the ships. "This is Captain Velros of the Valorian Defense Fleet. We will not commit genocide for a lie. We refuse to fire on Earth. Other vessels, if you have any honor left, stand down. This is not protection. This is murder." 6 more Valorian ships powered down their weapons. Then 12 more. Nearly a third of Kelthrin's fleet had mutinied. The Valorian crews were not all loyal to their corrupt leaders. Some of them still believed in the ideals that the Combine supposedly stood for. Watching Earth fight so desperately for freedom had awakened their conscience. Kelthrin screamed orders at the defecting ships, threatening them with execution and worse. But his words had no power anymore. The facade was completely broken. Minho saw the opportunity. He contacted Thragos directly. "Commander, we need to end this without destroying all the Valorian ships. Many of those crews are just following orders. They are not the real enemy." Thragos considered for a moment, then nodded slowly. "You are merciful for a species at war. Very well. We will target Kelthrin's flagship. If we disable it, the rest will surrender." "We need him alive," Hana added. "Dead, he becomes a martyr. Alive, he can stand trial for his crimes." The combined human-Krell operation began immediately. Doyen coordinated the attack from Earth. Junho's fighters harassed the flagship's defenses. The Krell battleships hammered its shields. And Gina did something unexpected. She hacked into the Valorian systems using the back doors she had found earlier. "I am shutting down their weapons," she announced. "But I can only hold it for 60 seconds. Make it count." The flagship's shields collapsed. Its weapons went offline. Its engines sputtered. Thragos sent boarding parties that stormed through the disabled vessel. Within minutes, Kelthrin was captured. The ambassador who had threatened Earth with such confidence was dragged before the cameras in restraints. The remaining Valorian ships surrendered immediately. Without their leader, and with so many of their own crew refusing to fight, they had no will to continue. The battle was over. Earth had survived, but the victory came at a terrible cost. 3 cities had been badly damaged. Thousands were dead. Entire defense platforms had been destroyed. Junho's squadron had lost half its pilots. Yuna's hospitals were overflowing with wounded. The planet was scarred and bleeding. Minho stood on the command center balcony and looked at the smoke rising from the cities below. Hana joined him silently. They had won, but it felt hollow. "Was it worth it?" Hana asked quietly. Minho watched rescue workers pulling people from rubble. He thought about every person who had died fighting for Earth's freedom. Then he thought about what would have happened if they had surrendered. Centuries of exploitation, generations living under Valorian control. Humanity would have survived, but only as subjects. "Yes," he said finally, "it was worth it. We are still free. That matters." Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread instantly. Earth had defeated a Valorian occupation force with help from the Krell. The supposedly primitive humans had exposed the protection racket and inspired rebellion. Within days, 17 more worlds declared independence. The Valorian Combine was collapsing. Thragos contacted Earth one final time before his fleet departed. "You fought well, humans. You are braver than species with 10 times your technology. The Krell respect courage above all else. We will remember this alliance." "What happens now?" Minho asked. Thragos smiled his fierce smile. "Now you rebuild. Now you grow strong. And now the galaxy learns a new truth. Humans do not need protection. They never did." 2 years after the battle that changed the galaxy, Minho stood in the same place where Valorian ships had once threatened his world. But the sky was different now. Human ships moved through orbit alongside vessels from a dozen different species. Earth had become a hub of galactic activity, and the sight still amazed him. The Valorian Combine had collapsed completely. 43 of the original 47 protected worlds had declared independence within months of Earth's victory. The remaining 4 had negotiated their freedom peacefully. Kelthrin and his closest supporters were still on trial, facing representatives from every species they had exploited. The proceedings were broadcast across known space, ensuring that everyone could see justice being done. Hana had become one of the lead prosecutors. Minho watched her on the screen sometimes, presenting evidence of centuries of exploitation. She was relentless and brilliant. Kelthrin had tried to maintain his dignity at first, claiming he had only done what was necessary for galactic order. But as victim after victim testified about the tribute payments, the forced labor, and the threats, his defense crumbled. The trial would take years to complete, but the verdict was already certain. The real work was building something better. The former protected worlds had formed a coalition called the Free Worlds Alliance. Unlike the Valorian system, this alliance was built on equality. Every world had an equal vote. Every species contributed according to their abilities. There were no subjects, only partners. Earth had played a central role in forming the alliance. Doyen had become humanity's first ambassador to the Galactic Council. He was perfect for the role, with his military experience and diplomatic skill. He understood both strength and cooperation. Under his guidance, the alliance created a real mutual defense pact, one based on trust rather than fear. "The key is transparency," Doyen explained during one of the founding conferences. "The Valorians controlled information. They kept their subjects afraid and ignorant. We must do the opposite. Share intelligence, share technology, share knowledge. When everyone knows the truth, no one can use fear as a weapon." The Krell had surprised everyone by joining the alliance as equal partners. Thragos had returned to Earth several times, and a genuine friendship had developed between the fierce warrior and the human leaders. The Krell taught Earth advanced weapons technology and military tactics. In return, humans taught them about diplomacy, propaganda, and what Thragos called the art of winning without fighting. "Your species thinks differently than others," Thragos had told Minho during one visit. "Most civilizations focus on technology or military power. Humans focus on ideas and communication. You won your freedom not just by fighting, but by asking the right question at the right moment. That is a kind of power the Krell never developed." Taeyang and Gina led Earth's technological revolution. With access to knowledge from dozens of advanced civilizations, human science had leaped forward. They combined alien technology with human innovation, creating hybrid systems that sometimes surpassed what either species could achieve alone. Clean energy was now universal. Disease was becoming rare. Climate damage was being reversed. But they were careful about how they shared this technology. The memory of the Valorian gifts with their hidden control systems had taught them an important lesson. Every piece of technology Earth distributed was open source and transparent. No hidden codes, no surveillance systems, no remote shutdown capabilities. If we give people technology, we give it freely, Gina explained to the Technology Council. We want partners, not dependents. That is how we stay different from the Valorians. Junho had risen to become commander of Earth's first interstellar defense fleet. He trained pilots from a dozen different worlds, teaching them the aggressive tactics that had helped humanity survive against superior technology. His classes were popular because he emphasized creativity and adaptation over rigid doctrine. The key to fighting a stronger enemy, he would tell his students, is to do what they do not expect. Be unpredictable. Be stubborn. Never give up, even when the situation looks hopeless. That is the human way. Yuna had founded the Galactic Medical Exchange, a program that shared medical knowledge between species. She discovered that each civilization had developed unique approaches to healthcare based on their biology and culture. By combining these different approaches, they could treat conditions that had previously been incurable. Her teams traveled to worlds that had been neglected under Valorian rule, providing free medical care and training local practitioners. The Valorians controlled medicine, she said during a conference. They used it as another tool of dependence. We will use it as a tool of liberation. Nari had become the voice of the Free Worlds Alliance. Her broadcasts reached billions across dozens of star systems. She reported news, shared stories, and maintained the communication networks that kept the Alliance connected. She made sure every world could hear the truth, uncensored and unfiltered. Information is power, she often said. The Valorians knew that, which is why they controlled it so tightly. We know it too, which is why we share it so freely. The changes were not just political and technological, they were cultural. Earth had become known across the galaxy for something unexpected. Humans were the species that asked uncomfortable questions. They challenged authority. They refused to accept easy answers. Other civilizations started to emulate this attitude. The phrase, "as humans would say," became common when someone wanted to question the status quo. 5 years after the battle, Earth launched its first colony ship. The destination was a world 40 light-years away that had been surveyed and approved by the Alliance. Hundreds of volunteers boarded the vessel, ready to establish humanity's first interstellar colony. Minho and Hana stood together watching the launch. "Do you remember when we first met the Valorians?" Hana asked. "We were so worried about making a good impression, about being accepted into galactic society." Minho smiled. "We made an impression, just not the one anyone expected." The colony ship rose into the sky, its engines burning bright. It would take decades to reach its destination, even with the improved drives Earth had developed. But that was fine. Humans were patient when it mattered. They were also stubborn, brave, and unwilling to be pushed around. As the ship disappeared into the stars, Minho thought about everything that had happened. One simple question had changed everything. They had been offered safety, and they had asked from whom. That question had exposed a lie, started a rebellion, and reshaped galactic politics. The galaxy was different now, not perfect, but better. The Valorians had maintained order through fear and control. The Free Worlds Alliance maintained it through cooperation and respect. There were still conflicts and disagreements, but they were handled honestly rather than through manipulation. Thragos had visited Earth one last time before the colony launch. He stood with Minho looking at the stars and spoke in his gravelly voice. "Your species has only been part of galactic civilization for a few years, but you have already changed it more than species that have been traveling the stars for millennia. Do you know why?" "Because we asked questions?" Minho guessed. "Because you refused to be afraid," Thragos corrected. Every other species that met the Valorians accepted their protection because the alternative seemed too dangerous. Humans looked at the danger and said, "We can handle it ourselves." That courage inspired others. That courage broke an empire. Years later, when Minho was much older, students would ask him about those first days of contact. They would want to know what it was like to face the Valorians, what made him and the others so brave. He always gave the same answer. "We were not special. We were not uniquely courageous. We just remembered something important. Freedom is always worth fighting for." Safety without freedom is just another word for prison. When someone offers to protect you, always ask from what, and if they cannot give you a good answer, then you already know the truth. Earth continued to grow and expand. More colonies were established. More alliances were formed. Humanity spread across the stars not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners. They carried with them the lesson they had learned in those first frightening days of contact. Never accept easy promises. Always ask hard questions. Stand up for what is right, even when it is dangerous. These simple ideas, combined with human stubbornness and courage, had changed the galaxy. Kelthran's trial finally ended after 7 years. He was found guilty of exploitation, fraud, and crimes against dozens of civilizations. Instead of execution, he was sentenced to travel to every world his policies had harmed and publicly acknowledge what he had done. It was a more fitting punishment than death. He would spend the rest of his long life confronting his victims. The last time anyone saw him, he was an old, broken figure standing before a crowd on a former protected world. He looked into the cameras that broadcast his confession across the galaxy and spoke in a tired voice. "I believed I was bringing order. I believed the ends justified the means. But Earth taught me something I had forgotten. There is no order without justice. There is no peace without freedom. The humans were right to ask their question. I had no good answer because there was no good answer. We were not protectors. We were oppressors. And for that, I am truly sorry. It was too little, too late. But it was something." Minho, now an old man himself, watched that broadcast from his home on Earth. The planet had been completely rebuilt. The scars of battle were long healed. New cities gleamed under peaceful skies. Ships from 100 worlds came and went freely. His grandchildren asked him to tell them stories about the old days, when Earth first met the aliens. He would tell them about the fear and the courage, about the friends he had made and the enemies he had faced. But most importantly, he told them about the power of one simple question. "Never forget," he would tell them. "When someone offers you safety, always ask from whom. Because real safety does not come from others protecting you. It comes from being strong enough to protect yourself. That is what it means to be human. That is what it means to be free." And somewhere out in the galaxy, on dozens of worlds that had once lived under Valorian control, people told similar stories to their children. They talked about the day a primitive species from a small blue planet had refused to be afraid. They remembered the humans who had asked one simple question and changed the galaxy forever. Earth had not accepted the galaxy's order. They had changed it. And the galaxy was better for it.